time there's a good financial number that comes out, that scares the markets into thinking that maybe interest rates are going to keep going up, which they are, And so what happened today was we had a blowout jobs number, like you said, and interest rates went up in the U.S.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, blowout jobs report. What does that do? It breaks the markets because bad news is good news and good news is bad news. And I'll leave it to John Rubino. You find him at rubino.substack.com to figure out which is which, because I don't know anything anymore, John. So is the job report a good sign or is it a bad sign?
Hey, Kerry. Well, normally rising employment is a good thing, and it would be in a normal world, but this isn't a normal world, and especially with the financial markets, they got so fooled by the Fed pausing and its interest rates increases last month into thinking that this was it, that we were done and we were going to go back to easy money, but it turns out that's not the case. And every time there's a good financial number that comes out, that scares the markets into thinking that maybe interest rates are going to keep going up, which they are, And so what happened today was we had a blowout jobs number, like you said, and interest rates went up in the U.S. The 10-year Treasury note yield is now back up over 4% in the U.S., and mortgages are back up over 7%. So those numbers are extremely bad for financial asset prices because, for instance, stocks compete with bonds. And when the yield on a bond or on a money market fund or a short-term piece of treasury paper or whatever rises way above the dividend yield on the average stock, then people see no reason to take the risk of stocks when they can get twice the yield by buying fixed income paper. And so that's bad for the stock market. Also, rising interest rates lead to recessions, which is also bad for stock prices. So now stocks are down hard today as interest rates are up. And the reason for that is that now everybody's starting to think, oh my God, maybe interest rates are going to go up and that's going to break the market and cause a recession. And what kind of a recession will it be? Will it be really deep and dark like 2008, 2009? Will it be even worse than that, like the gloom and doomers say? And so we got stocks tanking now. And in any event, this market is so overdone. This is the worst market breadth that the U.S., the S&P 500, has ever seen. There are only 5 stocks now accounting for almost half the increase in the S&P 500 in the last year, and that can't be sustained. So, we're at the point where interest rates are still going up, and if they're at a level that can break the market, stocks are starting to fall. And the Fed has no choice but to raise from here and definitely not tighten from here. So this is a really, it's really a normal historical setup for a nasty equities bear market. So let's see if it plays out that way. But this is how it went in 1999 and 2000 when the tech stock bubble burst. And in 2007, 2008, when the housing bubble burst. Interest rates went up along with stocks until rates were high enough to break the market. We're kind of back there again right now. So let's see if it plays out the same way, which means let's see if we get a nasty equities bear market from all of this.
Hey, and throw in on that, on top of all that, the Supreme Court saying that the president doesn't have the authority to negate student loan debt, which is supposed to cost student loan borrowers now $15.1 billion per month. And you got the makings of an interesting economic meltdown. One thing I would like to point out, and I've pointed it out on other shows, John, the top publicly traded homes builders last week saw their stocks hit a 5-year high. And with interest rates going up, this is completely counterintuitive. And we also saw new home sales rebound. Was it either last week or the week before? So maybe all this is just subterfuge and the money's really going to start pouring out even more soon, I'm not sure what to think.
Well, I have the home builders as short candidates on my Substack portfolio. And the reason for that is that, as you said, rising mortgage rates tend to hurt the housing industry and the home builders in particular, because they're like the leverage play. They've got payrolls and they've got inventory and everything. So they need a steady flow of new houses. And if that dries up, then their business model just crashes and burns and their stocks tank. That has happened in the past. So we'll see if it happens again, but they're down hard today, at least. But you're right. Yeah, everything's down pretty hard today. And the home builders are among the stocks that are getting whacked, along with all the commodity complex and gold and silver. Everybody's down. I have a big long portfolio on the Substack, and literally one stock out of maybe 30 is up today, and that's some junior miner that has some specific thing happening today that's really good. Otherwise, everything is getting smashed.
They must have struck plutonium in the Ukraine or something like that.
Yeah, I should have looked to see why it was up, because there might be a reason. Oh, I know what it is. I'm sorry. I do know what it is. They fired their CEO a couple of days ago.
Well, that's bullish.
The stock tanked. So now it's rebounding from being down like 12% a couple of days ago when most of the miners were up. So I don't know. Everything is down now. Okay.
So as you like to call it, the big toy indicators flashing. RV sales and Rolex sales are down bigly. We've been sounding the alarm about Rolexes for a good 3 or 4 months, but normally you'll get a blip on that indicator and then they'll go higher. It just tells me that things in China are way worse than any of you out there think.
Because even in really weird times, there's a lot of billionaires out there buying the most expensive thing in whatever category, right? So there's always a market for high-end stuff, and which means when high-end things roll over, that means you've got trouble in a sector of the economy that doesn't normally display trouble, and Rolexes are a good sign of that. So are RVs. I mean, our RVs are one step down. They're not the Rolex population. They are the suburban. RVs are for suburban guys. Well, actually, there are two categories of RV buyers. One is the people in the RV subculture, where they drive around and they park at different places and they meet their friends and have a great time. That's fine. That's a subculture that does its own thing, and they aren't really a sign of anything. But the part of the RV market that is a sign of something is the suburban male. It's always the husband, okay, who has the boat and the motorcycle and a big house and is looking around for the next toy. And he says, well, why don't I buy a house on wheels for $150,000 and drive it somewhere once every 3 months? That's basically how it works. So at the peak of the cycle, when guys like that are at their most confident, is when RV sales boom. And then at the bottom of the cycle, when everybody's having to go through their toy inventory and sell them all, that's when RV prices crash. So we're starting to see that market roll over. RV prices are down, RV sales are down, but it's nowhere near over yet. I looked up what it costs to borrow money to buy an RV. And the potential interest rate is crazy. Like at the low end, it's just 8 or 9%. So it's not much more than a house. But the range can go up into the 20s and 30s percentage-wise, which means if you don't have great credit and you try to buy an RV, they bleed you dry. And so there's probably people out there doing that too.
So higher rates really impact everything: auto sales, home sales, RV sales. I don't know how many people buy Rolexes on credit, but there's probably a number out there that do.
If you have to borrow to buy a Rolex, you're not a legit rich guy, you're a pretender.
Yeah, you're a poser. You're a poser. But credit runs the economy. So the question is, when things really start blowing up, John, how long is it going to take the Fed to go into full-scale panic mode and say, we didn't really mean it. We're going to support economic growth, and inflation's under control. We're not worrying about that. So everything is great. By the way, a July 4th cookout was up 29% this year from last year. So, I mean, yeah, especially if you're cooking steak, then it's up even more. It's like double. Hot dogs, well, whatever they throw in there. Hot dogs are the ultimate proof that the substitute effect is alive and well, right? Because if they can't get whatever they throw in there, they can always find something cheaper to put into a hot dog, right?
Yeah. It's like the old saying is you never want to see how your laws and your sausages get made. Hot dogs are the extreme example of that case. You go to a hot dog factory, you never eat hot dogs again. That actually happened to my sister. She
Really?
went on a tour of a hot dog factory. This is like 40 years ago. And she never ate meat after that. She not only stopped eating hot dogs, she became a vegetarian.
The same thing happened with Milton Berle. His friend took him on a tour of a slaughterhouse, and this was back in the 40s. And for the rest of the guy's life, 60 some odd years, he never ate another piece of meat. So this is a case where ignorance truly is bliss.
Well, you know what I think that we should ask Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to do when he becomes president is put not camcorders, cameras.
Yeah, body cams, like the
Or
cop.
webcams, that's the word
Right.
I was thinking of, webcams in all the slaughterhouses, so that there would be channels where we could go online to see what's happening in, Smithfield Farms, slaughterhouses, and then we would see where our food comes from. And I think that would be very useful information. I've talked about this with other people who said, no, nobody would eat meat anymore. We can't do that. Well, if that would be the price of knowing the truth, so be it. But, I think we should know all of this stuff, all these things where we only do things because we don't know the truth of it. We should really know the truth of it. And slaughterhouses are definitely one of those things.
Maybe then they can put some cams up in cricket farms, since that's what the World Economic Forum is trying to get us to eat insect protein, because it's good for you, right?
Yeah. The thing is, I don't necessarily have anything against the concept of eating bugs, because when you think about eating meat, that's pretty gross too. And I totally do that. But if it comes from the World Economic Forum, I'm automatically against it now. So it doesn't even, 17-minute cities or whatever, 15-minute cities, you name it. Every one of their ideas is horrible, or at least easy to spin in a horrible way. So, and the only optimistic thing that I get from the World Economic Forum and George Soros and people like that is that they're all incredibly old. Bill Gates is he's 70-something years old. Klaus Schwab is looking like Joe Biden, and George Soros just retired. So it could be that whole generation of would-be dictators is going to leave the stage before they succeed in taking over. And the next generation who comes in won't be nearly as crazy as the current generation. We'll see, but that would be a nice thing to hope for.
Soros' son seems to be as crazy as him, like when it comes to putting in prosecutors who just let criminals walk. And we don't have to get into all that, but yeah, what's bad for the World Economic Forum is generally good for humanity. But have you watched what's happening in France? I mean, this is like the George Floyd riots on steroids. They've called out 40,000 cops. If it continues on much longer, there'll be a shoot to kill or shoot to injure.
Well, that is the inevitable result of open borders. If you let so many people come in that it's impossible to integrate and assimilate them into a society in an orderly way, then you get stuff like this, because you basically create a second-class citizenry that is so big that it can't be managed. And that's what happened with Europe in general and France in particular. And what is their choice now? They could round up the last 5 years worth of immigrants and ship them to Algeria or someplace, or they could try to assimilate them in ways that would be incredibly uncomfortable for the native French population. And I don't know what other solution there is. You only have those two solutions, because either you change your culture in ways that make it possible for everybody to get along, or you slice off a big chunk of the culture and ship it somewhere else. And neither of those is a workable solution. So I don't know what their prognosis is. It doesn't look good.
No. Well, they kind of have these things that happen regularly, like New Year's, they burn hundreds of cars throughout the country. Hey, they burned down the public library in Marseille. Now, what library wasn't doing any harm? Where are they going to put their homeless people? If it's like the United States, we house a lot of homeless people during the day at libraries, public libraries throughout the country. So,
which is really not where you should put homeless people.
No.
Any place we're putting our kids, we should not simultaneously put homeless people. But we're seeing the early version of what France is going through, because the quality of life in our big cities is already just plunging.
Oh,
and that's not largely an immigration thing. That's more of a drug and mental illness thing. We're just not managing those populations the way you have to. And there are places that have done it well. Switzerland confronted the whole drug thing and solved it. And a lot of cities don't have homeless people. They figured it out and made it work. The solutions cross political lines. That's the problem. You need some stuff that conservatives are appalled by, and you need some stuff that liberals just won't do under any circumstances unless there's a gun to their head, in order to make this stuff work, apparently, based on the places where it has worked. So we need some really painful compromise on these issues, or else it's just going to keep getting worse, and we need to obviously close down the southern border for 10 years while we try to sort out all the people that have come in and in the last few years. And then we need to institute policies that make it illegal to camp in downtown San Francisco, areas. Stuff like that.
Austin.
And
not just there, it's Austin. It's the only cities where homelessness isn't really a huge problem are the cities that really crack down on public drug use. And they arrest these people and they say you can go to jail or you can go to drug treatment, but you're not going back. And they keep doing it until finally, hopefully, these people come to terms. But, if PJ O'Rourke said that, I think it was him that said a liberal is just a Republican who hasn't been mugged yet. Well, maybe we should change that to a liberal is a conservative who hasn't stepped in human excrement yet in one of our major metropolitan areas across the country.
Yeah. In this given time, if we don't have a societal collapse because of our finances and we don't have a nuclear war, we will work this stuff out, because these problems are solvable. Immigration and homelessness and drug use. This is all stuff that can be fixed by a healthy society willing to think outside the box. My fear, especially for my kids who are going to have to, live their adult lives in the world that we're creating, is that we're not going to be the kind of healthy society that's able to fix these basic problems because we're screwing up on such a fundamental level otherwise. We're on the verge of World War III twice with Russia and China, and we're heading off a financial cliff that is just going to be so brutal when the time comes. But but all of that is a little bit further down the road. And right now we've got a garden variety recession coming, garden variety equities bear market, that kind of stuff, and So that's a lot to talk about for us in an ongoing way. But we still got these big looming things out there that I think are the really scary part of the picture today.
Hey, let's not forget that our generation, the baby boomers, are also retiring, drawing down on Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid too, because if you don't have enough money for a nursing home, you go on Medicaid in most states and they pay for it. So intractable problems by any stretch. How do you can't say to you and me, look, we understand you paid in to Social Security and Medicare your whole lives, but there just isn't enough to go around. So take half, that is not a recipe to get reelected in the modern America, is it?
No, but mathematically it has to happen one way or another. Here's what baby boomers did when seen through the eyes of younger generations here. We, the boomers, ran 40 or 50 years of extremely easy money policies, which made our stocks go way up and our houses go way up. So we have massive paper wealth right now. And younger generations are closed out of easy stock market profits and of home ownership at all, right? So now, a lot of us are healthy. We're going to live a really long time. And so these guys are, they're hoping to inherit pretty well, but we're not going to die. Boomers are just not going to keel over and let those guys inherit all this stuff that we accumulated. We're going to keep it for a really long time. So, Gen X, millennials, they've got a difficult 20 or 30 years ahead of them watching us enjoy our retirements while they can't even buy a starter house. So politically, they're going to lean towards massive cuts in Social Security and Medicare, but they're not going to be able to get it through because we're still such a politically powerful generation that we will protect our benefits. So, we're going to go to the grave as a completely self-interested generation that dominated the world from beginning to end. It's historians will not be kind to baby boomers.
Right. So we got some big court rulings, but the first one isn't Supreme Court. It's a federal district court judge in Louisiana who banned a number of government officials from contacting social media with the intent of suppressing speech. Now, it doesn't apply to crime. FBI can still talk to them if somebody's committing a crime. It doesn't apply to national security. But I think the crux of it is they're trying to get the government out of the disinformation determination business. Basically, the Secretary of State can't contact them. Homeland Security cannot contact them. A whole list of government officials. I mean, this could really be a major victory for the people, huh?
Oh, this is huge. It has the authoritarian left absolutely freaked out. There are some details, though, that have to be understood with this, which make it, less likely to stick, but also way more interesting. But this was a couple of Republican states going to court in the court of a Trump-nominated judge, okay? And see, he came out and said what you just said. He said, you can't, the FBI can't get involved with private sector companies telling them to censor people who are saying, oh, I don't think kids should be vaccinated, or, having basic differences of opinion with government policy. So it's possible that because of the people involved right now, that this gets overturned on appeal. But it's also possible that the appeals go all the way to the Supreme Court, who will be really sympathetic to this idea. So it could be that this goes back and forth for a year, ends up at the Supreme Court, who just locks it down, who makes it the law of the land forever. And that would be, I think it would be very cool, if we ratified the First Amendment by making it, explicitly unconstitutional for governments to get involved in public speech, which that's the way it always should have been. It was only lately that these guys
novel concept, huh?
Yeah. And if we lock that down, then you will have to say that Trump was an incredibly consequential president, right? Because it's basically his judicial system
free speech
that is making all this happen. Yeah, he is locking. Well, if this goes all the way to the Supreme Court and is upheld by the Supreme Court, Trump will have locked down some very important freedoms for a generation, if not more.
In fact, we are going to put a link to the decision. I'm getting it off of Politico, but it doesn't matter. My personal opinion is that this is pretty much bulletproof. He issued it on July 4th of this year, which is like, all right, I just don't see any court having the cojones to overturn this. Maybe they'll dump it on a procedural basis. So it's only a 7-page decision. I encourage all of you out there to read it. I just think it's bulletproof. I don't think, doesn't mean they won't find a way around it. Okay. Because, hey, that's what lawyers do. But hey, what about the fact that the New York Times is outraged over this, that the government can no longer control disinformation or what they determine to be disinformation? One man's propaganda is another man's truth, John. This could be the most important case from the courts. I mean, there's a few of them out there, but the courts have basically failed us during the pandemic. They failed us. In so many instances, the court has failed us. Will this be the one example where they actually come through and protect the Constitution and what the country stands for? I think that going against this decision going to be very, very difficult, no matter who nominated you as judge.
Well, that's going to be fun to watch when the appeal lands in like a DC court or something like that. Some very liberal set of judges have to hear it, and they have to publicly agonize over what to do about it. That's going to be fun, and knowing that the Supreme Court is there as a backstop makes it something we can just enjoy instead of worrying about. Because even if the liberal court, the liberal appeals court, decides to overturn that decision, there's still another step. It still goes to the Supreme Court. So we'll see. But I think there's a lot of theater that's going to be fun to watch between here and the end of this process. It might be a couple of years really before this is completely settled.
How do you justify it though? As the government, free speech, blah, 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 how do you justify censorship? I don't think there is a justification for it, especially when the censorship is so inconsistent, where it's really aimed at one aspect of the political spectrum. It's generally people on the right who are getting censored. People on the left can say and do whatever they please. Maybe this is all a result of Musk's takeover of Twitter. In the meantime, we had 3 other big rulings there. One on affirmative action, where basically the court said you can't use it to consider who's admitted to a college. Web design, bakeries, compelled speech, where they can't be forced to do work for gays or any other people that they don't agree with, especially on religious grounds. Seems to be some merit there. And then finally, student debt, where the court pretty much said, hey, it's a great idea, but the president does not possess the powers to forgive or to basically declare a college debt jubilee for a portion of college debtors, or as we like to think of them, John, as college student loan debt slaves, right? So it's kind of like we could be going to a civil war over this. Could be like the Dred Scott case of student loan debt, which causes the young, over-indebted, up to their eyeballs students with student loan debt, dropouts, whatever. It's mainly dropouts that have the problem. People who actually complete their degree, most of them are okay, but maybe it'll cause a rebellion among college, student loan debtors.
Gary, that goes back to the baby boomer thing. We got through college when it was super cheap.
Right.
And to the extent we took on loans at all, the stock market went up so much that we paid those loans off with no trouble. And so we're free, most of us. But the generations that followed have, $227,000 to get a second tier law degree, stuff like that they'll never get out from under. And are student loans the loans where you can't even declare bankruptcy and get out? Yeah, okay. So
dischargeable in bankruptcy.
You literally can never get out from under them.
You can Hotel California. Anytime you like, but you could never leave.
I know. So anyhow, that's a very big that court case was a separation of powers debate, whether Congress makes a law that spends money on something, whether the president's allowed to come back and say, oh no, okay, we're just going to cancel that whole, the spending program and everything. And it turns out he can't, according to the Supreme Court. Congress has to manage a spending program, which is what the student loan plan is. The other one that's really interesting was about a web designer who didn't want to make a website for a gay wedding or something like that. Which that's been a debate that's been going on for a long time. Like, if you're a bakery, do you have to make cakes for people who your religion says you shouldn't participate with and everything? And that's always been a fascinating argument because both sides kind of have a point, right? But in this case, they made it a freedom of speech issue where by participating in, by making a wedding cake or by setting up a website or something like that, you're participating in public speech and you're being compelled to speak in a way that you disagree with. And that's what the Supreme Court said, was that you cannot compel speech in this way. So okay, it sounds like that settles all those different cases out there that have been pending for a long time.
I think so. And we've got a link to the decision. This one's directly the Supreme Court, so you can read it there. Long winding road, like the Beatles said. I mean, this is one of those ones that lawyers will fight over for years. But the concept is Congress has the power of the purse, and it's up to them to basically pull the plug on student loan debt. But you know what? It's going to happen. We talked about basically debt jubilees. They're having one in China now. Millions and millions of people have stopped paying their mortgage payments because they were paying mortgages on hollow shells in buildings that would never be built because the developer abandoned them. The money all got stolen. They took the deposits. That's a little lightning and thunder going on in Florida here for a change. They took all the money and they used it to finance other projects, pay off CCP officials. And now there's no money left to finish them. And the buyers are left holding the bag. Point is, it's not just a unique situation here in the US. It's a global situation. John, the only thing that's gonna be able to treat the problem here to save the patient is a complete debt jubilee. Believe that for the past, since I started doing these podcasts, I think that's what it's going to be now.
Well, Kerry, inflation is a form of debt jubilee in that it makes your debt, 5% or 10% less onerous every year. So in the same way that it's a tax increase, right? So that's a secret way to do this stuff. You just inflate away the currency. A full-on debt jubilee would run into a lot of the same problems as a student loan forgiveness or something like that, because you would need an actual law that passes Congress and the Senate and is signed by the president. So you need all those different groups going along with it, and that's a pretty hard sell.
As we see, right? See. It's a very hard sell. But in the end, there is no other solution, because as you've said, and I've said many times on the show, the debt is unsustainable. The increase in the rate of debt is unsustainable. And now with interest rates going up, the ability to service the debt is becoming harder by the day.
Gary, you know what there apparently is something that they can do, which is stimmy checks. They did that already and got away with it.
Where Congress.
Yeah, well, but giving constituents free money is something that kind of sells pretty well, at least in stressful times. So it's possible that you pass something like that, only make the check bigger, make it a $50,000 stimmy check for everybody. And of course, you destroy your currency, but you get reelected.
Well, $50,000 stimmy check. If you don't have any student loan debt, you keep it. If you do, you got to use that check to pay down your student loan debt. Any halfway measure is just not going to work. There's going to be an aha moment where everyone on the planet realizes can't pay it back. And we're going to have to start. This goes back to the Bible. Every 7 years, a mini Jubilee, and every 49 years, a major debt Jubilee. I don't see any other way, but hey, we'll see what they come up with, the Biden administration, to try to counteract this. In the meantime, I think I'm going to lose my power here. We're having a massive thunderstorm. Maybe we'll get a tornado. Who knows? Make sure you go over to John's Substack. It's rubino.substack.com. We're always at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Leave your comments below, please. And John, we'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks.
All right, Jerry. See ya. Go run around in the rain a little bit. That sounds like fun.
Love it. Yeah, especially lightning and thunder. And
I know.
it's severe thunderstorms, but maybe I will later. All right. Take care.
All right. See ya.